is to review the notes on elasticity and tax incidence. The incidence of a tax means who pays, in fact, where does the burden of the tax fall? How much of it goes to the producers and how much of it goes to the consumers. In our first graph here, we can see that we have a moderately elastic demand curve that would have a range from up here, okay, a fairly elastic range, down to here, a fairly inelastic range. At the intersection of supply and demand, we can't tell for sure. What we know, we're probably somewhere in the range, close to the range of unit elasticity. So the first question is, what is the price being paid by consumers currently? And we can look at this graph and identify that the equilibrium price is currently $8. The price received by producers is also $8 because right now there is no tax in the market. So the price that consumers are paying is what producers are receiving. Okay, what is the consumer surplus currently? For this, we don't have letters, we actually have numbers. So we need to figure out the area of this triangle of consumer surplus. So the height of the triangle is 6. The base of the triangle is 15. So base times height gives us 90. Base times height times 1/2, which is the formula for the area of a triangle, gives us a consumer surplus of 45. Producer surplus with similar calculations looks like it would be the same size, but in fact, the height of this triangle is 8. So the producer surplus is 60. If a $2 per unit tax were imposed, and I'm going to erase those lines just to make it a little, whoops, I was going to erase those lines to make it a little bit easier to look at the graph again. If a $2 per unit tax is imposed, that is going to be a cost in this market, which means it is going to shift the supply curve, okay, upward. Now, if I can do this, sometimes the computer doesn't let me do this very well. The supply curve will shift up here, and you can see it shifted up by $2 because that is the difference, okay, between the point where the initial curve was at 15 units and where the new curve is. Now it's $10 to produce each unit if it's 15 units. Okay, what will happen to the price paid by consumers? It looks, at first glance, we might think the consumers are going to go from paying $8 to $10, but in fact, that is not the case because the consumers will not tolerate that. At a price of $10, okay, there would be 15 units supplied, but only 10 units demanded, so we would end up with a surplus. In fact, market forces are going to push us to a new equilibrium, and that new equilibrium point is going to be, my eraser doesn't want to work, that new equilibrium point is going to be at around $9. Okay, we can see that right here, around $9. Okay, so $9 is now the price being paid by consumers, but producers will not receive all of that $9 because the government is taking a portion of it. The government is taking $2 per unit. So the producers are going to receive about $7. And we can see that on the graph, okay, as the difference between the price being paid by consumers and the price received by producers. Okay, and if we take that and turn it into a rectangle, okay, which would be the quantity of now probably about 12, okay, times the $2 gives us a government revenue of about $24. Okay, so this rectangle here is the government revenue. So now, consumers are paying more and producers are receiving less. What happens to consumer surplus? We can see the triangle up here of consumer surplus has gotten smaller. In fact, the consumers have lost some of their surplus. Some of it went to the government and some of it became a deadweight loss, which we'll see in a moment. Producer surplus is also smaller. Okay, producers lost part of their surplus to the government, and in addition, they lost some of it to a deadweight loss. Government revenue, we've already drawn on there, so where is the deadweight loss? It is this triangle. Deadweight loss represents surplus that used to exist but is now gone from this market. Okay, lost happiness, disappearing happiness, another way to state it is allocative inefficiency. All right, quickly, we'll just look at these other two graphs. If you look at this graph, where the demand curve is much more inelastic, okay, we can see that if we impose the same tax, we'll have a slightly different impact. Okay, this time, okay, you can see that although the price went up paid by the consumers, the producers really did not lose a whole lot because the consumers were really willing to continue to pay even though the price went higher. And the impact on output is almost negligible. Okay, we can see that the output went down from 15 to maybe about 14 units. This particular scenario with pretty inelastic demand, okay, we're still going to have a government revenue of $2 per unit. This is going to bring in more government revenue because there's going to be more units. Okay, so this is going to maximize the government revenue. The more inelastic it is, the more government revenue you're going to get from a tax. The deadweight loss will also be smaller because we did not lose as many units of production. Okay, it's hard to tell much of an impact on consumer surplus here because consumer surplus is so large. Producer surplus will be reduced, however, because they're not cutting back on units, okay, the impact won't be as large. If we look at a more elastic demand curve, okay, here's where we see the most dramatic impacts. Because with elastic demand, if you put a tax on the item, people are just not going to buy it anymore. And here we can see what happens. At a price of $10, if the producers actually tried to charge $10, the consumers would refuse to buy any of this good. As the equilibrium price that we're going to end up with is actually going to be way down here, just a little bit over $8. Okay, you can't really charge these consumers much more. So the producers are the ones taking a hit here. Right? The producers are not going to be able to charge anywhere near what they were charging before. And the government is not going to collect as much revenue either because only about 11 units are going to be sold. So we're going to have more efficiency loss, okay, a lot less consumer surplus, and of course less producer surplus as well.